Number 10. Mysterious ship. Nothing is stranger to find in the desert than an ancient shipwreck. But that's exactly what was found in the Namibia desert just a few years ago. Diamond miners discovered a ship that sank 500 years ago after they drained a man-made lagoon on the coast of Namibia. And while shipwrecks are frequently discovered along this area, which is commonly known as Africa's skeleton coast, this ship was special. It was loaded with around $13 million worth of shining gold coins. Some archaeologists are calling this the most significant shipwreck ever found in the country. One of the reasons it was lost for so long is because it was literally underneath the sea floor. According to Fox News, the mining workers had to use bulldozers to create the man-made lagoon by pushing back the sand at the coast to create a sort of seawall. They then had to pump out the seawater from the giant hole they dug. And that was when they found the wreckage. It was literally buried beneath the desert sands. The ship that was found had been built in the 16th century. When archaeologists arrived, they knew something special had been discovered. But it was no easy task to excavate the site. The mining workers had to use 2 dozers and a fleet of trucks just to keep the lagoon dry for long enough for archaeologists to dig up some treasures. Luckily, they found the treasure chest on day 6. The archaeologists literally pulled out a giant chest filled with Spanish and Portuguese gold coins from the sand. Later, the ship was identified as the Bom Jesus, which literally translates to the Good Jesus. It was a Portuguese ship that went missing about 500 years ago while on its way to India. In addition to the mass amount of gold, the ship was also loaded with ivory, 44,000 pounds of copper ingots, and lots of tin. Number 9. Hidden desert pool. Deep in the desert of San Bernardino County is located an unexpected luxury. Back in 2014, a small and mysterious pool showed up in the middle of the desert. It was apparently created by an artist who purchased a small plot of land and decided to build a luxury pool in the absolute middle of nowhere. But what was really interesting about this strange desert pool was that it was considered a social experiment. The only way to find the pool was to stop by an art center in West Hollywood and pick up the key to access it. When you picked up the key, you were given coordinates that led you deep into the sandy wasteland of the Mojave. You then had to either hike or drive all the way out to where the pool was. It was a long and exciting adventure to reach a shallow pool completely isolated from the rest of the world. But as a social experiment, it was kind of a failure. This random pool in the middle of the desert, located among shrubs, snakes, and lizards, only lasted a handful of months. The first visitors to the pool cared for it and used it properly, but eventually too many people learned of its location. Within a short period of time, the public had destroyed their own pool, and now all that's left is a sad reminder of how hopeless the public really is, sitting trashed and dirty in the Mojave Desert. Have you ever found a hidden swimming pool? What kind of mischief did you get into there? Was it a drained pool that you used for skateboarding? Or did you use it for a romantic tryst? Tell me about your adventures in the comment below. Then remember to subscribe to Talltanic for more fun and exciting videos just like this one. Number 8. The Atari Graveyard. In New Mexico, near the desert city of Alamogordo, a strange stockpile of ancient video games has been recovered from its burial site. The story behind the games is incredible. It began in 1983 when Atari paid Alamogordo to dump nearly 800,000 video games into its city landfill. But after '83, people mostly forgot about the incident. Nobody could remember where the video games were buried. Then, over 30 years later, when it became clear some of the buried video games could have been worth a lot of money, people decided it was time to start looking for them. After doing quite a bit of digging, the Atari graveyard was eventually found 30 feet under the ground, buried inside of the trench. The city of Alamogordo then dug up the games that they had originally buried and sold the treasures for nearly $100,000. According to CNN Business, they sold nearly 900 games, including a single copy of what is still considered to be the worst video game in history. I'm of course talking about E.T. the Extraterrestrial from 1982. This one game alone sold for $1,535. Number 7. Ancient petroglyphs. On the windswept Chilean coast at the edge of the Atacama Desert, scientists have discovered fantastic petroglyphs from about 1,500 years ago that depict the slaughter of a variety of sea creatures. These new petroglyphs are showing how ancient hunters used harpoons and rafts to hunt unthinkable marine beasts. According to the petroglyphs, 1,500 years ago in Chile, the native population was hunting sea lions, swordfish, sharks, and even whales. The pictures were painted in iron oxide on the sides of massive boulders, and there were hundreds of scenes found displaying epic battles between whales and humans. This new archaeological evidence is suggesting that the society that lived in the valley between the ocean and the desert may have been one of the first specialized civilizations on Earth to hunt marine animals. They had extremely sophisticated fishing techniques, including intricate fish hooks crafted from shell, bone, and cactus spines. They even used sea lion skin to make their rafts. These incredible depictions were discovered at a new site in El Medano, and it's pretty boggling to imagine a handful of guys in sealskin raft hunting giant whales with spears. And yet, that's exactly what happened back then. For anyone who thinks whale hunting only cropped up in the 19th century, think again. It turns out that humans have been hunting whales ever since we could build boats. Number 6. The Nevada Clown Motel. Perhaps the creepiest thing ever discovered in the desert is the Clown Motel of Nevada. It's absolutely horrifying. This hotel is located at the edge of the desert, it's decorated with thousands of freaky clowns, and it's positioned conveniently beside an abandoned graveyard. If you're the kind of person who likes creepy things, then there's nothing better than a haunted clown motel complete with a cemetery. And even though this might seem like a place straight out of a Stephen King novel, it's 100% legit. But the clientele at this strange place may surprise you. First, the Clown Motel primarily caters to bikers and truckers. Also, the cemetery holds the remains of local miners who worked in the area decades ago. There is absolutely no connection between the clowns and the graves. They just so happen to be sitting next to each other. Number 5. World War II plane. There is a World War II airplane sitting in the middle of the Sahara Desert. It had remained untouched for the last 7 decades before a Polish oil worker stumbled across it completely by accident. The oil worker had been on an expedition in the Egyptian desert, where he came upon the aircraft sitting in the sand 200 miles from any town. But the story of how it crashed into the desert is far more fascinating than the story of it being found. While the plane is still in relatively good shape, it's still just an old piece of war machinery lost to the sands of time. But until 1942, the fighter plane had served its purpose. That is, until it crashed into the Sahara Desert and the pilot was lost. According to Business Insider, the pilot was likely only 24 years old at the time. It's also believed that the pilot, likely someone named Sergeant Dennis Copping, survived the initial crash. A parachute discovered on the side of the wreckage appeared to have been used as a shelter from a horrifying desert sun before the sergeant ultimately succumbed to heat and thirst. The pilot had been a member of a fighter unit based in Egypt during World War II. He had been flying the airplane to a British airbase to get it repaired when it crashed. It looks like those repairs will finally get done, as the RAF Museum in London is planning to recover and restore the aircraft to put it on display. Number 4. Utah Evaporation Pools. The Utah Evaporation Pools are some of the most spectacular things you can find in the entire state. Unfortunately, they are not natural. These pools are special evaporation ponds used in the production of potassium chloride, but they look like a natural phenomenon. These pools are located in the middle of an otherwise barren landscape in Utah, and they have captured the world's attention because of their beautiful electric blue color. These pools have created an almost otherworldly landscape, like something you might see on an alien planet. However, you under no circumstance should ever try to swim inside a Utah evaporation pool. That's because you would likely shrivel up from all the salt and dehydrate your body. The sun works to evaporate the water inside of the ponds, and after about 300 days, all of the liquid brine turns into salt and crystals of potassium. These pools are basically just stranger versions of mines, since the potash comes from the basin underneath the ground, and the potassium is dissolved by pumping hot water down through drilled wells and into the mines. The brine is then drawn out to fill up the above-ground pools, where the water turns a magnificent shade of blue. Number 3. Organic substances on Mars. Our next discovery does not even come from our own planet. However, you can't deny that Mars is basically one giant desert. And even though Mars is a seemingly barren wasteland, there have been some pretty impressive discoveries made on its surface. For example, in 2018, NASA released an article stating that they found ancient organic material on the face of the red planet. NASA's Curiosity rover, just a few years ago, found evidence preserved in rock on the fourth planet from the Sun that suggests Mars supported ancient alien life. This is literally proof of alien life, but for whatever reason, it seems to have been swept under the rug ever since NASA released the information. Either nobody wants to talk about it, or somebody doesn't want you to hear about it. In any case, the findings are real. The rover discovered organic molecules inside of sedimentary rock dated to be about 3 billion years old. The robot also found seasonal variations that seem to indicate that there had once been real seasons on the red planet. This means that billions of years ago, Mars could have hosted an entire planet of animal and life forms, with winters, summers, and everything in between. This is a fantastic biological discovery on another planet, and it goes to show that even without human intervention and global warming, there is nothing that can stop a planet from turning from a cornucopia of life into a barren wasteland where nothing lives. It's just the cycle of the universe. Number 2. Mystery Monster. A bizarre creature has been spotted on camera strolling through the desert, and people can't decide whether it's a goat or chupacabra. People also can't decide whether it's real or fake. In the video, you can see the mysterious beast for just a few seconds before it disappears behind a bush. And unfortunately, the footage is quite fuzzy. The thing in the video could just be an extremely ugly man walking slowly through the desert. However, it definitely looks more like an alien or some kind of horrifying hairless ape. And even though some people claim the monster could be the chupacabra, it's extremely unlikely, considering the chupacabra only has ever been spotted in Central and South America. Portugal is quite a ways off from there, and unless the chupacabra saved its air miles, it probably didn't make it to Europe. Unfortunately, we still don't know what this monster is. Even though the footage has been shared and discussed by several different news agencies, nobody can identify the beast or even put forth a rational explanation for what was seen in this remote region of the Portuguese desert. Number 1. The Atacama Desert Alien. You may have seen the photographs of the tiny alien skeleton discovered in the Chilean desert, nicknamed Ata. Ata's mummified skeleton was found about 15 years ago, and ever since it has been a giant source of controversy. Ata's skeleton is only 6 inches or 15 centimeters tall, and yet the bones have the consistency of a child around 8 years old. The obvious conundrum here is that no 8-year-old child is going to be only 6 inches tall. It doesn't make any sense. And yet, the skeleton is real. According to the report from CNN, Ata's strange skeleton also possesses a long and abnormally angular skull with slanted eye sockets and not enough ribs. This has led people to speculate that the skeleton belongs to an extraterrestrial form of life. But of course, that is not the case. Ata's skeleton has been investigated thoroughly ever since its discovery, with researchers doing a full genetic analysis of the skeleton's DNA. They discovered Ata was definitely human, but that Ata suffered from a disturbing series of mutations. Ata had all kinds of horrible deformities, such as skeletal dysplasia, scoliosis, and other musculoskeletal issues. This caused what would have otherwise been a completely normal human to turn into a tiny preserved alien fossil. Of course, Ata would not have been walking around. The tiny person was likely dead upon birth, and it's likely that the birth could have had dangerous consequences for the mother. But the important takeaway here is that Ata's tiny skeleton is not proof of alien life. It's sad, but it's true. Which of these crazy discoveries do you think is the strangest? How do you feel about monsters and aliens being found in the desert? Let me know your thoughts, and thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe and come back soon.